Welcome to War is Stupid, an anti war podcast about war, the podcast that challenges the centuries old conventional wisdom that war is the smart and sensible thing to do. While the first episodes of the pod are about being horny for war as a concept, lusting for glory and revenue from weapons contracts, this episode is about people who are horny for the individuals who engage in warfare. I had a joke go viral, which of course is every comedian's dream, along with having an airport named after them, like Bob Hope did. And I feel icky about it. The problem with satire is that oftentimes people enjoy a joke at face value without realizing that they're being made fun of. So the joke is this. I was on the subway and I saw someone had written fuck the IDF. And it was confusing because I didn't know if it was a protest or an ad for Birthright. Now, my artist statement on the joke is that it's making fun of how Birthright pimps people out in the name of Jewish continuity. Some people are interpreting it as an endorsement of fun and flirty free propaganda tours, which in reality, I actually think that fetishization of the IDF is pretty gross. The military is romanticized and sexualized to the degree that there is even an army dance in Magic Mike, the first one, which is actually the worst one. It goes 2, 3, 1. In my humble opinion, the first Magic Mike establishes the world and our characters, but lacks the whimsy of Magic Mike XXL or the production value in the dance numbers of Magic Mike's Last Dance. The sexiest moments in the got too excited. The sexiest moments in the Magic Mike cinematic universe aren't the hunks cosplaying as soldiers, but rather the scene where Joe Manganiello dances to Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way in Magic Mike XXL, or in Magic Mike's Last Dance when Channing Tatum shows emotional vulnerability and bonds with Salma Hayek's daughter. Militarism is not sexy. It is scary. The IDF is committing crimes in both the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon and Yemen and Iran and Syria, and that is a major turnoff. We know the IDF is committing crimes because members of the IDF are coming out and saying that they're committing crimes. A recent feature in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz interviewed 5 Israeli reserve soldiers who spoke out about why they now refuse to fight in Gaza and are demanding an end to the carnage. Michal Deutsch, a 30-year-old in Jerusalem, volunteered for reserve duty as a combat soldier after October 7th and now refuses to take part in the IDF in any role. I know the sole aim of this war is the government's survival, she declared. The behavior she witnessed in the reserves is nothing short of sadistic. She told Haaretz, when I asked for clarification of open fire regulations and weapons safety procedures for soldiers, I was met with the claim that there's no place for politics in the army, all while the government mouthpiece Channel 14 was playing in the background and people were cheering on bombings from the base we were guarding, regardless of who the victims were. At a wedding that took place on the base, because that's something that happens, one rabbi spoke of a miraculous time. Itamar Schwartz, a 22-year-old discharged tank commander from Kfar Saba, was disgusted by the behavior of his peers. He told the paper, one army friend jokes about the flower massacre, people killed at aid distribution sites, and how many terrorists he killed. Another tells a story about a macho company commander who shot a detainee in the head because he spit at him. Killing people at aid distribution sites couldn't be farther from attractive. Shooting someone in the head gives me the ick. While Hollywood loves a man in uniform, in reality, militarism is incompatible with romance. Militarism is the belief that force solves problems, and it can be hard to disentangle from the battlefield. Once people internalize that violence is good, it's hard for them to turn it off in the classroom or the workplace or on dates. It trickles down, unlike wealth. In Love and War, How Militarism Shapes Sexuality and Romance, Professor Tom Digby explains how the military is unsafe for women and not for the reasons you'd expect. He wrote, women veterans of the Iraq War reported that the danger of rape by other soldiers was so widely recognized in Iraq that their officers routinely told them not to go to the latrines or showers without another woman for protection. Military policewoman Michaela Montoya says she carried a knife with her all the time. The knife wasn't for the Iraqis, she said. It was for the guys on my own side. In his memoir, Pain is Weakness Leaving the Body, A Marine's Unbecoming, former U.S. Marine Lyle Jeremy Rubin writes, "To be a man in the Marines was to channel life's difficulties into rage, store one's rage like a battery stores energy, and then apply such rage to whatever battle must be won. It was also to fail to contain the rage like a corroded battery leaks acid." Sounds like a textbook terrible boyfriend. Militarism is also incompatible with romance because it's built on suppressing emotions, and love is an emotion after all. It is also fundamentally dehumanizing. War dehumanizes the so-called enemies so they can be killed, and dehumanizes the soldier by turning a human into a killing machine. As Rubin writes in his memoir, to dehumanize anyone is to dehumanize everyone. Rubin also described deployment as an incredibly fucked up frat house and that the troops spent a lot of time jerking off. He writes, "You're surrounded by all the porn you're not supposed to have, and no one, including the commanders, gives a shit. Most of the mags were left by the Brits, some from other US units. They get mixed together in every hut and hooch. Nuts, Maxim, Loaded, Playboy. You wonder how publications so salacious could also prove so bougie. The British rags come off as less prudish than their American compliments, but they're both obsessed with what you can and can't do. You hear IEDs, improvised explosive devices, go off in the distance, and then watch kids, old men, poppy farmers, everyone go about their day like nothing happened, except for the people that it happened to." That's a rough lifestyle, and not in a hot way. Occupying Afghanistan, jerking off in a tent, and then patrolling villagers at gunpoint is not the same thing as Titanic's Jack Dawson traveling the world drawing French girls. Now that's romantic, including the time where he drowns. Now, I understand wanting a man in uniform. It shows he's capable of holding a job. But we're romanticizing the wrong uniforms. We should start sexualizing mail carriers. Legally Blonde started this movement. Mail carriers are hot. They always deliver. And there's also a joke in there about always filling the slot. Tee-hee. I read a lot of romance novels, and there's a trope called competence porn, which refers to how sexy it is to see people be good at their jobs. And the IDF are not good at their jobs. If you can't free hostages or overthrow a government without killing 18,000 children, you're bad at your job. Romanticizing soldiers also does a disservice to the soldiers themselves as it obfuscates the truth of what they experienced. The struggle does not end when a soldier returns from deployment. According to the Wounded Warrior Project's most recent survey, 76% of respondents reported to having post-traumatic stress disorder. The other 24% didn't get the survey because it went to junk mail. People with PTSD need treatment, not fairy tales. Brown University's Cost of War Project reports that at least 4 times as many active duty personnel or war veterans of the post-9/11 conflicts have died of suicide than died in combat. 7,057 U.S. service members were killed in the post-9/11 war operations, and 30,177 died by suicide. The report finds that these high suicide rates are caused by multiple factors, including risks inherent to fighting in any war, such as high exposure to trauma, stress, military culture and training, continued access to guns, and the difficulty of reintegrating into civilian life, the paper reads. But the study finds that there are factors unique to the post-9/11 era, including a huge increase in exposure to improvised explosive devices and an attendant rise in traumatic brain injuries and modern medical advances that have allowed service members to survive these other physical traumas and return to the front lines in multiple deployments. The combination of multiple traumatic exposures, chronic pain, and lasting physical wounds is linked to suicidal behaviors. To glamorize war is to deny these realities and to deny veterans the help they need. If you want to help a soldier, don't get them laid, get them a therapist. If you or someone you know is feeling suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Veterans should press 1 to be connected to the Veterans Hotline. Help is available. All right, this is exciting. This is admittedly a very clunky transition, but we have our first ever guest on War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please welcome Penina Beede.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, you have an amazing story, which is now a solo show that will be... First, tell us about the solo show.
Yes, okay. So the show is called Slack Off, and it's about how I had a manic episode and joined the Israeli army. And I fell in love with an Israeli soldier, and it made sense at the time. The thing about mania is that like you're like doing your thing and not really listening to anyone being like, is this a good idea?
Set the stage. What year is this? This was like
Yes.
20...
This was, so I graduated high school in 2013, went on a gap year program, didn't like most of the people on the gap year program, started hanging out with like a family friend and his friends, and then one of those friends was this guy. And then I like didn't want to go to college quite yet or whatever, I don't know. And I was also, if we're getting into it.
Yeah, hell yeah. This is the Call Her Daddy of history. We're getting, we want to get deep. We want to get that unwell Alex Cooper sponsorship.
Yes, Alex, call us.
Yeah.
So I, in high school, so I went to Jewish day schools, and in high school was 2009 to 2013. And during that 4-year period was the beginning of the boycott, divest, and sanction movement in general and on college campuses. My freshman year, Hampshire College was the first college in the country to divest from companies related to the occupation. And then by my senior year, UC Berkeley had its big hearing where the university student government voted to divest. And the teachers and leaders in my community were like scared out of their minds. They started coaching us on like, when you go to college, people are going to attack you for being Jewish, and you have to defend Israel no matter what. And it scared the living daylights out of me. And so, I went to an Orthodox high school, and a lot of people go to Israel for a gap year program after high school. So I did that. And then, like I said, fell in love and all these things, had a manic episode, cheeky little episode. And I decided I didn't really want to go to college subconsciously for that reason. But I also was very self-conscious of this like small, tight-knit Jewish community that I grew up in, where there were a lot of judgmental adults. My parents were great. They were like supportive to a fault, but there were other adults in the community who wouldn't have taken kindly to me not going to college, at least right away. I always planned to. I just was like, I'm not ready, whatever. I'm afraid. And so like, truly, I believed the acceptable alternative thing to do was to join the Israeli army.
Yeah. And you're not the only one, which is bonkers. I was thinking like everyone has a weird childhood, but our childhoods were weird with geopolitical consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I also grew up going to Jewish day school, and it was a thing. If you don't want to go to university right away, probably the University of Western Ontario or McGill in Montreal, then of course, see the world, go join the army, which sounds romantic until you're presumably nothing takes the magic away, like standing at a checkpoint in the West Bank. But no, it's like a widely accepted, normalized thing to do for teenagers from North America to join a foreign military.
And to be clear, I wasn't a combat soldier. I did serve a lot of guard duty, but most of the time I was like, if somebody invades, I'm not equipped to defend this base. But yeah, I was an education non-commissioned officer, so it was a little light propaganda and like sending people on birthright trips.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And so that's
perfect segue.
Exactly. That's the tea.
Yeah.
What did you think it was going to be going in versus what it actually was?
I guess the answer is I didn't think. My job is basically like student activities coordinator. but army style.
That's funny. Like it's college, but with machine guns.
Well, yeah, that's what people in Israel do when they're 18. I mean, I remember on my like an induction day or whatever, it was a celebration. There were like professional photographers and people with like balloons, and there was a face cake. I remember, like, it was a coming of age.
A face cake?
A face cake. Oh, Orly, you got to get a face cake.
Please.
It's literally it's a cake with like somebody's face, like a real image printed onto the cake. And it's like, like the picture of the soon to be soldier, and like Mazal Tov, like little writings of like Gius Ka, like have an easy enlistment, Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Big celebration.
Yeah, it truly is the equivalent of like, sending a kid off to college, but with what
with a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it's like, this is normal. This was normal. The person I was dating was already in the army. All of our friends were in the army, and so it just felt like, this is what I want to do. I want to fit in, and ultimately, in retrospect, honestly, not until a couple months ago did I really come to terms with the fact that this show that I'm working on and this experience was fundamentally about us searching for belonging. And so I felt like, well, if, it's not just about moving to Israel. Plenty of people can move to Israel. Would have been great, honestly, if I just moved to Israel and like not done the army. Whatever, that would have been problematic in its own way, but it wouldn't have been.
You could have just done drugs and partied in Tel Aviv.
See, well, that's the thing. While we're on that like people going on gap year programs in Israel, like, it is a playground for these kids. They're drinking for the first time, or at least I was, because I was a nerd in high school. It's a party year. It's a year of partying. And there's no self-awareness of like
Israel trips in general. Like there's a big thing in Canada called the March of the Living, where in grade 11 you go to Poland for a week, tour the camps, and then go to Israel for a week to the implication being like, now it won't happen again now that we have this country.
Right.
And people would just
now we can do it to other people.
Exactly. And people would just come back talking about how like they toured Auschwitz and Poland and then also tried vodka for the first time, because it was everywhere. It's Poland.
It's Poland. Yeah, you go out in the city, you get drunk at night. Yeah, well, and in Israel there's a parallel there, because in the education system in Israel, like, I don't think we give enough credit to the media that the average Israeli is exposed to. They're not reading Haaretz, they're not reading 972 or On the Note. They're not most of them, unless they're like highly educated or American, they're not reading these news sources. They're getting media and education from a very specific slant.
Channel 14, as we mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yeah. Yes. So these kids, their education system is like, from a young age, in their history books, they never use the word Palestinian. They say like the history of the Arabs, and it's always like pretty demeaning. Like, it doesn't really humanize them in these textbooks. And then in their senior year, they spend the whole year learning intimate details of the Holocaust. Like, listen, I went to day school. We spent a lot of time on the Holocaust. But these kids, like, they know every single like high-ranking officer. They understand the hierarchy, the org chart. They understand the org chart of the SS. Like they know everything about the Holocaust. And then at the end of their senior year, they go to Poland, and then the very next year they join the army. And so it's
the study of the Holocaust is not to get ideas.
No, it's not to get ideas, but it is to justify
anything done to others.
So one could argue.
It's just a straighter line than what we get from the diaspora.
Meaning, like, our education was more implicitly racist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, something that boggles my mind is that the reality of the Nakba was completely hidden from me. The only time that I ever heard that word was in, I want to say, 11th grade. Our history, our like Jewish, I want to say maybe it was Israel history teacher, kind of offhandedly said, "Oh yeah, when we were studying the War of Independence and the founding of the state of Israel, like, some people call this the Nakba." And
Does she still have a job?
oh yeah.
Okay, phew.
No, well,
Yeah.
let's hear the follow-up question, or the follow-up statement. She says, some people call it the Nakba, and they call it that because they hate Jews.
Oh, classic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it really, and like my process of coming back from Israel and really understanding how I came to believe that joining the Israeli army was like a normal and acceptable thing to do. It was an unraveling process.
Absolutely.
And I think probably one of the inflection moments for me was watching a documentary about the Nakba, and fully understanding what that was. Like, it's wild to me actually that it was only like 3 years ago that I realized that. I mean, before that I was already very critical of Israel, but after watching that, I was like deeply enraged of the fact that that was the only time the term was even mentioned to me, and that it was so skewed. And because it's crazy. I mean, the high school I went to was very staunchly supportive of Israel. My family at home was like liberal, supportive of Israel, and very critical of Israel, although still more supportive than I am these days. But like, even they never mentioned that. We never talked about the history of the founding of the state of Israel. We never really talked about the legacy. Forget the occupation, right? I mean, that's what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
We did not talk about 48.
You are an IDF dropout.
Yes,
So
I did. I did get out a little early.
Exactly. Yeah. So at what point were you ready to drop out, or it truly is like analogous to a sorority?
Yeah, realizing how messed up it is.
Yeah.
Wow. So, wow. The headlines are Orli Matlow compares the Israeli Defense Forces to sorority life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not a defense force, by the way. The question was, how did I realize?
Yeah. At what point
was I like, oh, this is messed up? It was
the day-to-day experience. Just it's you're a teenager, and
Yeah.
it sounds like a shit way to spend your time. Like,
and it was. It was a slow burn as well. I'm a very stubborn person, or at least I certainly was when I was 19. I'm working on that now, but when I was younger, I was like, this is what I want. This is what needs to happen for me. And I'm not listening to anyone else. And in fact, there was a moment during my advanced training after I'd finished basic training, where I was like sleeping in class. Like I wasn't, present. And the course commander called me into her office and was like, it just seems like you don't want to be here. And I started sobbing. I was trying to convince her that I did want to be here. Of course, if you're sobbing trying to convince someone you want to be somewhere, it probably means you don't want to be there. But yeah, I mean, in that moment, she was totally giving me an out. Like, she probably would have helped me get out of the army if I had, come clean. But I couldn't allow that. I couldn't foresee an alternative life. Like, this was I believed I had no other options. Like, truly, it was this or college. I didn't want to go to college. And so it was like, I like couldn't see what she was saying as being so true. I so didn't want to be there, but I was so trying to convince myself that I did. And that was the case for pretty much the whole time there. I mean, also it's like in my position, like in my placements, nobody really wanted to be there. It's mandatory conscription. So I was kind of like, well, I'm like everybody else. I don't want to be here either. Even though most people who voluntarily join really want to be there and feel very strongly about their views. And I was kind of like, la, la, la. My brain is running too fast for me to think about the consequences of my actions. 'Cause mania. And so it wasn't really until very far into my service. I think I was like a year and 8 months into my service, where I kind of started to envision another life for myself. I'd gone home. for a month, because if you are a soldier with family outside of the country, you're given a month every year to visit your family. And so I had gone home for a month, and then like a week after I got back, I got to go on birthright. And so very
As a
suddenly,
soldier.
as a soldier, yes, they send soldiers on birthright, which we could talk about how there's like this like sexy Israeli soldier culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the fun and flirty fuck fest.
Yeah.
And that just happens to be on a mass grave.
Right. Oh, no. Wow. Yeah. But I was on this trip, and I had been in the US for a month, and something kind of clicked where like I was like, "Oh, I have not been with my actual peers in 2 years." And then because also like with the language barrier is very difficult, and I was in this abusive relationship. I don't know if I mentioned that before. It was deeply verbally abusive. And
That nothing chips away at the mythology of the sexy Israeli soldier, like
verbal abuse.
yeah, or an actual relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, right. The realities of being with someone with PTSD and a God complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so there was just one afternoon where I took the bus home. I was on a base. This is how much I hated my job, that I requested to be assigned to a base where I didn't even have to live on the base. I would go like back and forth every day. And the best parts of my day were the bus rides, because I could just like pop in my earbuds and listen to a comedy podcast or an album. And there was one afternoon I went home on the bus, and I, popped my earbuds in, put in a comedy podcast, and fell asleep. Woke up in a daze, comedy podcast still playing in my ears, missed my bus stop. And in this fog, I have this epiphany of like, if I could move halfway across the world and join a foreign military, surely I could try my hand at stand-up comedy.
Oh.
But it was really about identity. It was like, I don't know what I want out of my life, and so I guess I'll just like be Jewish be as Jewish could be. And when that didn't work out, I couldn't see any other option until that I had that epiphany. And when I got back to the US, I started doing comedy, and I wasn't good at it at first. I like to think that I'm good at it now. But it was like I found a different identity that like really worked for me.
And yeah, the only thing more Jewish, I'd argue that the Israeli army doesn't behave Jewishly. So stand-up comedy is more authentically Jewish.
Oh yeah.
Than if not med school, then stand-up comedy
Right.
was the right move, consistent with your upbringing.
Totally. And also my mom's a rabbi, which is like she's kind of funny actually. I'm always like, "Mom, you could do stand up." She's like, "Listen, the bar is so low for a rabbi to be funny." But yeah, so I think rabbi's kid to comedy pipeline should be more common than it is.
Is that what you wish for young Penina, or like the current youths who feel they only know what they've been told, and the world feels so small when you're 17.
Yeah.
Just you want the kids out there to know that there are options, and also like to feel free to take the time to explore what's authentic to you.
But that shit's scary.
It's the scariest.
It was so scary. And so me going to Orthodox day school, I really loved. I honestly, like, in another world could have seen myself being like Orthodox or like conservadox. And I didn't want to relinquish that, or I didn't want to relinquish like Judaism being a huge part of my life. And so almost going to Israel was actually like kind of a relief, because it was like, even if I stopped keeping Shabbat, if I stopped keeping kosher, like I would still be so incredibly Jewish just by living in this country. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to be in that community. It was really hard for me to realize that it wasn't serving me to be in that community. And so my message is not like, leave your community, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it would be like, try it out. Try try what it feels like to be in the world, even if it seems scary, even if your teachers tell you that there are anti-Semites in the world. Just try. Like, be brave. You know, I wasn't brave. I was scared.
That's so interesting. Like I bet everyone told you, "Wow, you're so brave for joining the army," but no, you joined the army
People
out
tell
of
me I'm
fear.
brave all the time, and it's hilarious to me. Like with this show that I'm working on, I'm very honest. And in fact, in this new version, I start the show wearing only underwear. So
Ooh.
yeah, and I like try on different pants, hence the title, haha, slack off. And like, it's true. I'm very raw and open, and people are like, wow, you're so brave, or like, I'm sorry you went through that, or, you know, it's so impressive that you do stand up. But honestly, being in the Israeli army, living in Israel, was an exercise in humiliation every single day. Like, it's so difficult to be yourself in a foreign language. And so,
And
like,
also
that
in
did
a
prepare me for,
uniform.
yeah, and that totally prepared me for hecklers.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a uniform, you said.
Yeah, like it quite literally strips you of your identity. It puts you in the same outfit as everyone else. And were you like referred to by your name? Like, what did people? Did they
Yeah.
call you Penina? Okay, not like.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was great. Are you kidding? This is the first country where the name Penina wasn't weird.
Yeah.
Although it's actually a grandma name in Israel.
Oh, that's
so like
funny.
everybody's grandma is named Penina in Israel. And there's actually like a sketch in this Israeli sketch show called Eretz Nehederet about this like funny character who's like a grandma, where she's like, my name is Penina, na, na, na. So I don't remember what it is. I'll have to rewatch it myself, but a lot of people would quote that sketch to me. So
But
yeah.
you have your name, but that's the extent of your individual identity.
Yes,
sounds
yeah.
like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Did the people who were conscripted, like, did they judge you for choosing that, or they appreciated you?
I think a lot of people didn't get it. A lot of people were like, what are you doing here? And when I talk to Israelis now, they're like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And I remember before I officially conscripted, I lived on a kibbutz for 3 months as part of like a program. And we did Gadna. So let's explain what
Yes.
Gadna is. Gadna is like a week-long.
It's LARPing the army for teens. Like, it's a huge
Yes.
part of when all the
Yes.
Jewish summer camps spend their summer in Israel. There's military LARPing.
Yes.
And they come back being
They
like,
spend a week
you
like
don't know what I experienced.
right, simulating basic training. Some people do it for a full like 2 months or something. Like depending on, there's some gap year programs where they have you do it for like a much longer than a week. And then actually that program, I don't remember what the name is, that program will send you on a quarter of their year doing that Gadna. It's an option, you don't have to do it. But if you do it, and then later if you join the army, that
Your credits transfer?
the credits transfer.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's also an incentive, an interesting.
You're like, I'm already
weird,
2
crazy
weeks
thing.
in.
I've already got my time. I've already done my time. Yeah. So I did Gadna for a week before, just to like get a taste, which again, like that should have been an indicator of like, why am I doing this to myself?
Because I also want to establish, like, I have the privilege of knowing that you're a theater kid.
Yeah.
Like, you were not a high school athlete, were you?
I wasn't an athlete, but my school didn't really offer theater enough for me to be a theater kid, but like I would have been a theater kid.
But it's funny.
I'm a theater kid in my soul. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
theater kid, it's a state of mind,
Yes,
it's not a resume.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's funny, like, just the dichotomy of like militarism in Jewish circles, because it's like so few Jews join the Canadian or American army.
Yeah.
Like, the people are like, oh, that's so goyish. That's not our place. But like to go to the Israeli army, even though like, no, you gotta
Yeah,
do physical education.
yeah.
Let's go back. So you mentioned earlier that it's not a defense force.
Right. Yeah.
A misnomer.
It's a preemptive strike. Force.
Yes. So when did you have that revelation? And yeah, how do you square that with your?
I mean, again, like it's hard to point to any kind of moments of revelation. Like, so for example, I mean, I already knew it was not in my, I knew in my heart and in the back of my brain that like this isn't a defense force. Well, no, in the front parts of my brain too, but I wasn't like as horrified by it as when the 2021 incursion in Gaza happened. That was when I was like, how do we justify this? Where we just spend, where we just every few years go in and suppress, and then wait for them to like build up again, and then suppress again.
And the powers that be quite literally refer to it as mowing the lawn.
Yeah,
But it's yeah.
and conveniently, it's not just when they're built up again. It's also when they're oftentimes when they're like starting to potentially get themselves together, like collaborate with more peaceful organizations. You know, it's not just, oh, now their, you know, their defense system, their offense system is rebuilt, and you know we have to subdue them. It's also like they're starting to get, you know, the itch for freedom, the itch for, you know, self-determination, and start to like really buckle down and say like, let's collaborate and start our own you know, our own like genuine like sorry, I'm blabbering now, but it's like, you know, when these organizations, these various things, you know, Hamas, for example, like they have violent tendencies. And there are moments where they've said, okay, we know what, we're going to work with the Palestinian Authority. We're going to come together. We're going to collaborate. And those are the moments when Netanyahu and his cronies come in and say, you know, we're going to divide this. And
Now the past 2 years,
yeah.
what's it like? What's it been like to watch? Because I know since leaving the army, you haven't returned to Israel.
No, I haven't.
Did
Yeah.
that fully just taint your perspective of the country?
Yeah.
Like now,
Yeah. There's no going back. I actually had a dream about this brief period of time when I was like hanging out with my family friend and his friends, and it was such a nice little moment in time, and it's tainted, and it's so sad because that was like one of the happiest moments of my life where I was like, I have a friend group, like so the last 2 years, what's interesting is that about the last 2 years is that shortly before October 7th, like September, I finally really started to buckle down to work on this show. And if it wasn't for October 7th, maybe it would have been less like stressful and frantic for me to figure out what the show was going to be about. But once that had happened, I felt really compelled to like get this out as soon as possible, even though like great art takes time. And so I felt this like utter anxiety of like explain myself. And I was living in Chicago at the time. But I think this would have been the case regardless of where I lived, that I was working on this show and I was feeling a lot of anxiety about like explaining myself. And I was in community with a lot of, you know, radical anti-Zionists. And although I am deeply critical of Zionism, at times I have identified as a non or anti-Zionist, I also find the term a little bit not useful, because like we all have different definitions for what that is.
mm-hmm.
And
why debate the issues when you could just debate what words to use?
right. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
But it's such a cop out. Like it's the conversation that institutions would rather have what words represent than what's actually happening in the world right now.
Right. But because things were so frantic after October 7th, I found myself even more confused because I felt like I aligned with these anti-Zionist identifying people, but I felt that the term was not useful. I felt that like, what are my goals in doing this show? And in an earlier version of the show, I am like, and here's what I think, but nobody fucking cares what I think. And so I had to like reframe that. But working on this show and like, you know, finding out what I believed was a really big process. And I think as Jews, I think everyone, but especially specifically Jews, I think we do have an outsized role in bringing peace for Palestinians and for everyone who lives in Israel, Palestine. And I think there are two very important tracks that we can go on as Jews. There are those who say, I don't want to be part of any institution that is even remotely supportive of Israel. I'm going to be in this larger solidarity camp of people who are fighting for Palestinian liberation. And I think that's incredibly important, and I'm very supportive of people who are doing the work there. And I believe that there is an equally important role that for Jews to play in institutions, in our communities. And I'm not talking about ADL. I'm not talking about these far-right Jewish institutions. I'm talking about the liberal Zionists. Shout out.
Yeah, hi mom, hi dad.
Hi mom, hi dad.
Yeah.
Hi brother, hi sister-in-law. Like truly. Yeah, like I disagree with them about like the theoretical, the framework of peace and what that's going to look like, but we're so far from that. Maybe we should really just get our ducks in a row and oppose this, racist, horrible, evil government and the racist, horrible, evil institutions that are giving Jews a bad name. And so like my mom and I, for example, we disagree. There are things that we disagree with about like the ideology of the future of Israel. But we're just so far from it that we can find ourselves agreeing about so many things. And there are moments where I have to be like, this isn't okay. Like, for example, I had a conversation with her last year so in Chicago, there's a synagogue that hosted Yoav Galant.
Oh, yeah. Indicted by the ICC, former
Yes.
Defense Secretary.
Right.
But then people cheered him because he was like nominally anti-Netanyahu.
Yes,
so,
because he left his role in opposition to Netanyahu. And so I was talking to my mom, and also I'm kind of naive. I always just assume people have the same views as me, and that is not true. I was like, can you believe that this synagogue that purports to be liberal is having Yoav Galant, a war criminal, at their synagogue? And she said, well, I think it's great. He stood up to Netanyahu. I said, Mom, he didn't. The damage has been done. Okay, sure. He stood up to Netanyahu, not after tens of thousands of people died, not after using language that was extremely racist and problematic. And she heard that.
And it's a place of worship. Like, that's the bonkers part, how normalized it is to have fairs selling condos in illegal settlements in the West Bank as part of our synagogues.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
wow,
it's become so, like, no wonder kids grow up thinking it's a normal thing to do, because it's part of people don't realize that what they're supporting, if you zoom out a second, is either quite literally illegal by international humanitarian law, or if you talk to someone outside the bubble, they'll say, hey, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Joining a foreign military is weird.
Is weird, yeah. And, just to your point about these places of worship, we worship this state.
Yes.
We wring our hands and try to defend it, and there is no defense for these actions. And it's coming from this place of like, I have to reframe this because otherwise I can't believe anymore in it. And it really is. It's about, people say like Zionism isn't Judaism. And again, it's like, let's just leave the word behind.
Yeah.
But this blind support for Israel, forget the government, forget this current government, this blind support and intentional erasure of the Nakba, of the occupation, of, all of these things, that is idol worship.
Yes. Yeah, which is quite literally, is that the first commandment? The second commandment? Thou shalt not
Yeah, it's
worship
like
other gods
I
but
am the
me.
only God. Yeah.
It's like definitely in the top 5 of the 10
It's
commandments.
definitely top 5. Yeah.
I'm so impressed with you because you've used your experience to create art, and you also haven't lost your faith. Like
It's trying.
yes, yeah. Like I know. I used to say like I don't believe in God, but I do believe in Grandpa. Like I
Yes.
do the things. I've still never had bacon, just because like I love my family and like feeling connected to my
Yeah,
family,
I like
and
that.
like I did have a Rumspringa and have like Southern fried chicken. It was delicious, but then I still couldn't get the idea of my grandpa saying like "That's treif" out of my head. But now that our institutions have been so compromised and worshiping nasty, horrible, unforgivable things,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, after I got back from Israel and I started doing comedy, kind of found a new identity, I started my Rumspringa,
Yeah.
if you will. And the Rumspringa lasted like 8 years. I got this tattoo, even though I regret it. Reminds me of my most manic decisions, but whatever. And I really rejected Jewish life as much as you can when your mom's a rabbi. But I recently, again, like right before October 7th, like the timing was impeccable, started to really explore how I might be able to meld these two identities of being proudly Jewish, someone who likes to pray, who likes to go to synagogue on Shabbat, with this like deep love of my art as a comedian. And I'm still kind of struggling with that. But the way that I balance those out is that like I'm not willing to compromise my Jewishness, and I'm not willing to compromise my art, and that's hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If I had in a perfect world, I could keep Shabbat, while still being a successful, like a pursuing comedy as a career. Not doable. And so I balance those two out. Maybe one day when I'm super rich and famous, I'll say I'm only going on tour on, Thursday nights and Saturday nights and Sundays, but that's not in the cards right now. Yeah.
Also, Judaism has always been a buffet. The
Yeah,
irony
exactly.
of people committing crimes against humanity then considering themselves holier because they don't eat bacon.
Yeah.
Like, we're better Jews by default, even though we're wearing pants, because we haven't killed anybody.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah. When I was in the army, there was a brief I moved around a lot because I was like, I'm not happy here, move me. And also, they don't really do that. You can't just like move your placement in the army because I was like an American rabbi's kid, they really tried to accommodate me. You tried. But so I briefly was in my role on a combat base in the Navy in Ashdod, which is a border city with Gaza. And the unit that I was a student life activities coordinator for was a combat unit that would patrol the waters in the Mediterranean. And one time I was talking to a soldier and kind of asking like, so what do you guys actually do? Which is crazy that I didn't even ask before that. And he said, well, we patrol the waters, and if we come upon, like a fisherman, then we'll let him go. And if we find someone who seems a little more suspicious, then we'll take him in. Did I ask, what does suspicious mean?
Mm-hmm.
No. Did I ask any follow-up questions? No. Why didn't I ask any follow-up questions? Because I could not allow myself the cynicism that would make me question my decision. And so these things, these moments of like, huh, I guess that's bad, went right over my head because I could not bear.
It's a survival instinct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't open that door lest you walk through it.
Yeah. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who live in Jewish institutions who still are deeply critical of Israel. I think, well, some of them are not vocal enough. That's my opinion, is that like if you are deeply critical, they're not vocal because they don't want to lose their jobs because of donors or something, or they want to stay neutral because they want to build community. Okay. You would also, if some people, if they were to come to a point where they were as critical as you or I are, they would have to quit their jobs. They would have to separate themselves from that from their community, the community that holds so much joy and memory and positivity for them. And so that's a big part of it too, of like, you know, I couldn't allow myself to question these things or to oppose these things because it would rock my world.
Yeah, but what we need is a leftist Miriam Adelson. Someone
I know. The problem is we're all communists.
Yeah.
Nobody has money.
Someone to, fund joyful, exciting Jewish institutions to build community around shared humanity so future generations of kids who don't know if they want to go to college yet don't join the army. Like this status quo, it's also crumbling.
And I think, I think about my peers and people younger than me who were involved in the encampments last year, who are deeply involved in Jewish Voice for Peace, and deeply anti-Zionist, and they're angry. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, and
because we were lied to. And the argument sometimes people make was like, well, our teachers were lied to too. But I would say that people our age were even more lied to because of BDS. I think that the propaganda got kicked into high gear. And
it said that we're playing defense. We're the real defense forces.
Yeah, and there's this like Hasbara, explanation idea of like, well, if we only like intellectualize it enough, then we'll like be able to defend and we'll convince people, which never works in general, by the way. Like nobody really wants to be convinced, but it's the unraveling. Like that's how people change their minds. But so, I keep losing my train of thought. What was I saying?
But people are angry and like,
oh yes, people are angry. So
you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
And so I think about these young people who are so angry and become so radicalized because of their anger, and it's like, how could we have preempted that? Because there was a way that it didn't have to be this way. How do we do that? We need to teach in our Hebrew schools, in our day schools. I mean, this is like a 50-year timeline. Like I don't see it happening tomorrow, but we need to be able to teach the Holocaust, the founding of Israel, and the Nakba together because they're intertwined. And in order to understand the Nakba, in order to have maybe compassion without anger or some sort of sense about how this could have happened, you need to learn about the Holocaust. And I think when you learn about all three of those things, you actually really start to see how interconnected we are with Palestinian safety. And I think that if we're really able to tell the whole truth about that, we won't have kids who are radicalized to the point where they don't want to be Jewish anymore, where they're ashamed to be Jewish. Yeah. But that's like, I don't love to compare things, but like, when did Germany start educating their kids about the Holocaust? Or, took a while.
Yeah. The best way to preempt crises of identity is just consistent honesty.
Yeah.
And just to get rid of any of this zero-sum thinking. Like we're told our whole lives, like it's us or them, us or them. That's objectively insane and leads to horrible things.
Right.
Like it's funny because we're talking about this in beautiful Dumbo, Brooklyn, New York, a diverse city where everyone is able to respect each other while still keeping true to their to themselves and their communities. Like us or them thinking is fundamentally false. And so, and it's also interesting because like with the radical crazies in Israel, like I feel like my family there have more in common with secular Palestinians than they do with extremist Israeli settlers. So just that, yeah, build on commonality. And it's, yeah, anyone who says it's us or them is lying to you.
Yeah. Well, it's us or them if we want to continue the way it is.
Yes.
It's us or them if we don't want to see liberation. If we can't bear the thought of a two-state solution even at this point. Even although I don't think I don't think it's feasible, but not for the reason that's saying Jewish safety can't happen if there's a Palestinian state, but in fact because everyone lives everywhere.
Yeah.
And there would be more expulsions and more on both sides.
And it was by design.
If we were to, exactly. And so, but okay, if you want to see a two-state solution, if you want to see Palestinian liberation, that doesn't happen if you say us or them.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, we get, as part of the talking points, they're like, Israel's not an apartheid state. They're like 20% are Palestinian. So, okay, awesome. So grant the same citizenship and human rights to everyone. You've already proven that is Palestinians with passports. They're doctors. They're exciting, functional members of society. Like everyone can live together if you take your boot off someone's neck.
Yeah.
And also on a plug, A Land for All is an interesting group. We were just talking about like how two-state solution is infeasible. They're all about like binational state, like kind of like the Schengen area, like a European Union of everyone has equal rights.
Yeah, I mean, a two-state solution is actually like a very uncreative way of thinking. It's a very like 20th century idea.
It's so British Empire.
It's very
like
British.
That's what
It's
got
very
us
partition.
into this mess to begin with.
Which, by the way, I recently learned, just to go on this tangent, that there was a partition before the Israel-Palestine partition plan, and that was, of course, India and Pakistan. And that
same
was
year, which is bonkers. Like 1948.
the year before. Yeah.
Oh, close.
That was 47. So in 47, they agreed. Whatever. Partition happened. Hundreds of thousands of people, had to move. Many people died. It was disastrous. The next year, the UN voted on the partition plan in Israel-Palestine. The representatives from both India and Pakistan stormed out.
Wow.
Because they couldn't bear to see this happen to another place.
Yeah,
because it doesn't work. It doesn't work without more people dying, more people losing their homes.
And the proof, right? We already have enough proof of that it's impossible to deny.
Yeah.
So I guess the lesson is to learn from history and subscribe to this very podcast.
Whoa, good plug.
I don't know if there's no chill way to end this wild conversation. I'm like,
and I'll say just another resource plug is a book called Side by Side. It was written in the 2000s, I believe. Israeli and Palestinian history teachers came together and said, we're going to write a high school textbook that is unbiased about Israel-Palestine, about the history of Israel-Palestine. And they couldn't do it.
Wow.
And so instead, they wrote Side by Side, where every chapter on one side of the page is the Israeli narrative, and on the other side of the page is the Palestinian narrative. And it's the same era. And that's been the most informative, the most interesting piece of literature that I've engaged with.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, Side by Side. I'll need to check it out.
And I'd love to plug my show.
Yes, exactly. There we go.
That's what we really should be plugging. Okay, Slack Off is a solo show by me. It's happening all the time, everywhere. But the upcoming performances are going to be at the end of August and beginning of September at the Dream Up Festival, which is part of the Theater for the New City. and we need to sell tickets, so please come.
And how can people follow you, or where can they buy tickets?
You can follow me at Real Penina on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to learn about the tickets and about the show, you can go to slackoffshow.com. Yeah, please come.
Amazing. Yes, I said, would you have rather eaten hot wings or spoken for an hour about Israel Palestine in order to plug your show?
And why not both?
Yeah.
Sean, call me.
Exactly. Sean Evans, call us.
Call both of. We'll do it together.
Exactly.
Actually, I'm like, we should go on tour together. I feel that would be like a fun. We'll have to come up with like a funny name of like Jewish.
I know.
Israel.
I feel like exactly. Abby and Alana are split up, so like there's a market.
There's a market for two crazy
Jewess.
Jewish comedians.
One with curly hair, one with straight hair.
Exactly. We're undeniable.
Yes. So Sean, call us. The industry,
Comedy Central.
We've
call
already
us.
rendered ourselves unhireable by the institutions that raised us.
It's true.
So this is all we have at this point. So we're all in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.